Hello, my name is Chedomir Nestorovic and I am a professor at ESSEC Business School in Singapore, and today we'll talk about the future of ASEAN. ASEAN has just turned 50 last year, and like for the European Union, it started with an association of few countries. At that time in 1967 it was only 5 countries, and gradually they added on some new countries to the association. Same thing as for the European Union, it started with a small ambition, and today they would like to reproduce the success coming from the European Union. However, there are so big differences between the European Union and ASEAN that it is hard to imagine that in the near future ASEAN can replicate what the European Union did. The first difference is that in the European Union we have two countries composing the engine of the European Union, and these two countries are France and Germany. It means that if these two countries can agree on something, usually the other countries in the European Union follow. And if they don't agree on something on the other side, it means that there is no agreement for the European Union. Within ASEAN, it is impossible to reproduce this because one country, namely Indonesia, is so big in terms of population and in terms of economy that there is no partner like in the partnership between France and Germany. If we look at the figures coming from populations, practically Indonesia is the first one, and the next closest to Indonesia is practically having less than half of its population. And if we look at economy, it is exactly the same. It is exactly the same thing. On one side we have Indonesia, and on the other side we have Thailand, and the distance is practically doubled from Thailand to Indonesia. So there is no engine because there is no equal partnership between two countries within ASEAN. The second difference is that the European Union has started at a time where there was a division of Europe between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And the European Union, at that time the European Community, was clearly in the Western Bloc. So there was no wondering about on which side will the European Union go. Concerning ASEAN, we have two giants courting ASEAN countries, namely China on one side and India on the other side. And these two giants have completely different agendas. So they want to negotiate with ASEAN en bloc, or they are also negotiating country per country. So it is quite difficult for different ASEAN countries to resist the temptation to go with China or to go with India. The last difference is that the European Union has been built also on the social dimension, that is winning the hearts of people in order to embrace the accomplishment of the European Union. I will just quote three of them: the Schengen Convention on one side, the Eurozone, and Erasmus. If we talk about the Schengen Convention, it means that there is an abolition of border controls and visa-free entry for the countries which are part of the Schengen Agreement. And even if recently migration problems have put this into question, we still have a very big adventure, which is stating that with one Schengen visa you can enter several countries at the same time. As far as the euro is concerned, this is a fantastic achievement of the European Union because it is giving a physical evidence for all people who live in the Eurozone that there is something common with the other countries. Namely, they have the banknotes or they have the coins in their own pockets. There is no more a visible element of the European Union, and here in ASEAN we are far away from the achievement of any monetary union compared to something that we have in the European Union. And finally, there is a very interesting cooperation within the European Union, which is the Erasmus project. The Erasmus project is permitting students to go from one country to the other and take the ECTS, the European Transfer Credit System, in order to compensate for the time that they have spent in another country. So it means that they can go to another country, learn in the other country, and this will be counted for their original degree in the home country. We don't have many other countries or many other institutions in the world presenting the same thing. And for the people living in the European Union, this is also something which is very visible, because we have hundreds of thousands of people coming from one country to the other in order to continue their studies, to such an extent that even countries from outside of the European have applied for this. If we compare to the situation in ASEAN, we have very few cases where students from one ASEAN country go to another ASEAN country. In fact, if you are looking at the top 10 of destinations concerning Indonesian students going abroad, only Malaysia is in the top 10, and it is not on the first place, while for some other countries, such as, for instance, Vietnam or Philippines, no country from ASEAN is in the top 10. The European Union has been built in order to win the hearts and minds of the European populations. So this is why they are equally putting the emphasis on the economic side and on the social side. As far as ASEAN is concerned, we still have the situation where 75% of trade of ASEAN countries is made outside of ASEAN, meaning that only 25 or less of trade is made within ASEAN. So it means that there is no real push towards the integration of ASEAN economies, because they don't exchange very much between themselves. As far as the social side is concerned, of course, we cannot talk about the Schengen Agreement, because it is something that would be very hard to implement within ASEAN. However, the exchange of students could be a little bit easier to perform. However, even on this part, we don't have significant achievements within ASEAN.